It's showtime. Here we go. Here we go. My tuppence. Oh boy, here we go. You in on the flaming pile. So, I want to cast my opinion, as is my wont, on certain things that just happened in a small corner of the internet that, in the large scheme of humanity, whatever. But I think this talks to a lot of beliefs and opinions within the kind of culture wars narrative that we see played out in society all the time. I want to talk today about censorship, about deplatforming and cancel culture, and how actually all these things are not the same. And what has just happened in this tiny corner of the internet that I will just explain is not an example of cancel culture and is not an example of censorship, despite what so many people are saying and others aren't. So what's happened? What's the context? And I don't really want to get into the particulars here. I have my own opinion about the people involved, but I don't want to get bogged down in the details. So what are the details? There is a well-known biblical scholar called Dr. Robert M. Price, who's written a bunch of books, done a huge amount of podcasts, a vast amount of content over the years, who, if you know him, if you've listened to him over time, you would have absolutely no doubt, if you've been paying close attention, you'd have absolutely no doubt that he is vehemently right-wing. Okay, I've known this for over a decade now, just listening to his old Bible Geek podcast episodes, where he would occasionally go off on one about climate change and deny climate science, and then make sort of fairly barbed political statements and so on and so forth. Fair enough. Whatever. I always thought that was really bizarre, because he was a guy who was declaring that you should be more skeptical and better critical thinker when it comes to analyzing religious claims and different religions and the Bible. You really sort of thorough approach to finding out the truth of these things. But then jumping into conspiracy theories over here concerning climate science denial. I mean, I mean, this is going back a decade, as I say, but I was like, wow, this is really interesting, because there's massive double standards going on here, so on and so forth. Anyway, whatever, because this isn't like a video about take it from the particulars and move it into the general. So what are the particulars here? Well, Dr. Price is known to have some fairly problematic positions, politically speaking, where politics is morality writ large. So we're really talking about morality here. We're talking about someone's moral character. And he was invited onto a Pine Creek. Doug at Pine Creek invited him on to do have a chat about sort of politics and things that aren't particularly related to his normal biblical exegesis and historical analysis. What's interesting to note is the name of the video that Doug at Pine Creek did. He called it "Robert Price Joins Me." And I'm back. The whole video was about, presenting some controversial opinions. I don't know whether, yeah, there's something going on with my internet at the moment, which is, or this laptop, I think is having a right old, I don't know whether it's trying to update or something, is having a right old mare. If this continues, I'll do this again. Just let me know in the comments if I really keep freezing and it's really a problem. So anyway, so Robert Price has controversial opinions. This is not a controversial opinion. Like, he evidently has controversial opinions because he has been saying these things and people are getting on to. So then he goes on to this Pine Creek YouTube interview to air these controversial opinions. Now, what I'm trying to say is, here is a person who is over here, has really interesting ideas about biblical exegesis, but over here has really problematic or potentially problematic views about other compartmental. If you have a problem, you know, over here, then we say, don't worry about that, because I'm just going to leave the stuff over here in front of my mind. And this, you know, you say, right, I'm going to put this in a little box and I'm going to forget about that little box, because I think I might have to just start my computer again and see if I can come back on. So if you guys bear with me, and I'll start the whole video again. This has gone a bit Pete Tong. Let's give this a try. Apologies. Join me in about 5. Hello, hello. Can you all hear me? Say something in the comments if you can hear me. Hopefully that has sorted out the problems. Literally did a Windows update there with a blue screen and everything. So I think that was what was going on. It was just a bit of a Windows update and it was making my computer go nuts. Anyway, so I'm back. Thank you for sticking with me. If you indeed were, let me get up all the stuff I wanted to share with you. There we go. Excellent. Okay, so you guys are amazing. Thank you for bearing with me. I'm going to talk about definitions of censorship in a minute. So back to where I was. So where was I? We are talking about Dr. Price. So Dr. Price has these particular opinions with regards to politics and morality. And he has his biblical exegesis and scholarship over here. And generally, what I did before, and I've got Dr. Price's books, some books behind me of his, and I've read him and I've listened to him a lot. But I've also compartmentalized my moral opinion of him, or his moral positions and political positions, into one area of my brain. And that compartmentalization is basically cognitive dissonance reduction. So cognitive dissonance is where you have a core belief in your brain, and then you have evidence against that belief, and your brain has to do something to stop this disharmony. So it produces mechanisms and does certain things to stop this disharmony. And it might be that the evidence is morphed in a certain way that it harmonizes, or you reject something or whatever. So one of the ways of cognitive dissonance reduction working in my brain was to compartmentalize Dr. Price's problematic viewpoints that I personally had a problem with, right? And you push them to one side and you just concentrate on the biblical stuff and say, right, that's really interesting. I really like that. I really like what you say. But to some degree, compartmentalization is being dishonest with yourself. It's basically running away from a problem. It's putting a problem in a corner and saying, I'm not going to deal with that right now because I'm going to deal with this part of the person I'm talking about. Now, I'm going to do a reductio ad absurdum. This is where you reduce a scenario by analogy to a completely ridiculous extreme, and you do that to see if the logic holds. And then you can go from there. So what am I going to do? I am going to talk about Hitler because, why not? What I'm not saying is that Robert Price is Hitler. I'm not saying that at all. So please don't confuse me. Please don't be confused about what I'm saying there. So let's just talk about Hitler. Right. If I met Hitler and Hitler had some views on this area that were quite interesting and good, how would I feel about sitting down and talking with this guy, knowing what he had done, and actually giving him a platform to present those views, mainly those views, but occasionally some of the problematic ones get out. And I know his background and really morally disagree with him. In fact, I'd find it really difficult to be in the same room, let alone, giving a platform to this person. So I would feel really bad about giving that person a platform. And in fact, I would not give that person a platform, right? I would not give Hitler a platform. I'd say, right, I'm not going to interview you. You might have a couple of good ideas here and there, but basically I find you morally really problematic. And so I'm not going to give you a platform. So what that says is, if you broadly agree with that, if everyone broadly agrees that actually there are some cases where someone is so morally abhorrent that you can't give them a platform, what you're saying is that this logically acceptable. There's nothing logically problematic with saying no to someone in terms of giving them your platform. If that's fine, then what we're talking about is where you draw the line, right? So you're going to have Hitler down here, and you're going to have someone who's exactly like yourself up here, right? Exactly like yourself, but you think you're morally perfect because otherwise, you'd be morally different. Generally speaking, you think you're morally in the right place, and so therefore, interviewing someone who's just like you is absolutely fine, because here's a person who believes exactly what I believe. Great job. And down the other end of the spectrum, you've got someone who's the most morally abhorrent human being you can imagine. Now, that's a spectrum of humanity. Okay, now let's talk about platforming as something that content providers do. So someone like myself as a YouTuber, and Derek Lambert, who we're talking about here, spends their time and efforts presenting content for the world. And if people appreciated enough, they donate, and that's really kind and that's great. So there's a financial element to it, particularly more for someone like Derek, who that's his full-time job. So actually that is important. But at the end of the day, it's his time and it's my time and efforts to present stuff to the world that we want to present and we want to do. Now, there are heaps of people that we could interview that we don't interview, right? And you guys never know about that. I don't. There are some people I don't want to speak to them. I either don't like them that much, or I'm not that interested in what they say, or for whatever the reason may be, we decide not to interview them, right? We don't tell you about it, and that people don't get up in arms about that. It's just like, do you know what? I interview who I want to interview, and if you like that, that's cool. And if you don't like that, you can go to another place. So this is my channel. This is my platform, and I make the choices about that. And if you appreciate that, you stick around and listen and watch. And sometimes you donate, and that's amazing, right? But if you don't agree with that, you can go somewhere else to get what you want, or even better, perhaps, you can create your own YouTube channel, or whatever platform we're talking about, and you can put in that time and effort yourself. Okay, so what I'm trying to establish here is that a platform that any content provider gives is their own platform, and is what they do, and is part of their own sort of legal right to do what they want. Because I'm trying to move towards this idea is what Derek did in removing his platform for Dr. Price, censorship. Okay, so we're moving towards that. So now I'm going to give you another analogy, which is I'm walking down a street, someone is shouting obscenities to my right, and I'm like, I'm not going to speak to that person. So I carry on walking. Now, the question is my decision not to speak to that person an example of censorship? Am I censoring that person by not speaking to them? No, they're still able to speak. They're still able to shout on the side of that road, whatever they like. I'm not stopping them from shouting. I am just not interacting with them and allowing them to shout in my personal space. And I'm not going to walk up and give them a soapbox to stand on. I'm not going to say, oh, you're shouting really horrible things that I don't like. How about I go and help you shout them louder? Right. So I'm going to provide you a little soapbox to stand on, and then you can shout even further. Your voice can go slightly further because of my little soapbox I've given you. Me deciding not to give them a little soapbox to stand on is not censorship. Like, I am not obliged to raise their voice and to allow their ideas and voice to spread further. I'm walking past and I'm just not going to talk to you. I'm not going to invite you into my life, into my world here. There you go. See you later. So hopefully that analogy goes some way to expressing that this isn't censorship. And in fact, we can talk about, well, what is the definition of censorship? So on the one hand, you can get the broadest definition possible, which is on an individual level, which is if I don't allow you to write something on my blog, I am censoring you, which to me sounds really bizarre. Like, if I don't allow you to say something on my channel, I'm censoring you. So let's go back to Hitler. Like, I say, oh, I don't want Hitler's views on my channel. I'm not going to interview Hitler today. Am I censoring Hitler? I mean, realistically, in the common terminology of how we understand censoring, I don't think so. So I do not agree that an individual can censor. If you're talking about an individual using their own platform, their own individual's platform. I mean, it might be different if you as an individual are the president and you're saying that person can't speak on, and you're making regulation, then it gets different. But from an individual having their own YouTube channel saying, I don't want to speak to that person, that is not censorship. That is, articulating your own moral evaluations and sticking by them, and expressing your own legal rights to do what you want with your own platform. So I would say censorship has to be something that isn't just an individual thing. It's more like an institutional thing. So it's something like the government saying you cannot. It's like Putin in Russia saying you cannot call this the war. You have to call it a special operation, and you cannot show any TV footage of what's going on in Ukraine on my TV channels. That is censorship. That is a state, enforced diktat that means there is no freedom of speech for anyone in that country to say what they want. So, I think there's a difference. So let's have a look at a couple of definitions here that might sort of express what I'm trying to say here. So, defining censorship. This is from I think Oklahoma State University. So there are loads of different definitions you might want to use here. I mean, here's one: official prohibition or restriction of any type of expression believed to threaten a political, social, or moral order. It may be imposed by governmental authority, local or national, by a religious body, or occasionally by a powerful private group. Now, I think that to me is what I would say censorship is, and I think that sums it up well to the point where what Derek is doing at his own YouTube channel is not censorship. He's neither a government authority, local or national authority, a religious body, or even a powerful private group. He's an individual. So here you've got talking about, and this is the Academic American Encyclopedia. So this is quite interesting because it starts with that broad definition, which I disagree with. So in its broadest sense, censorship refers to suppression of information, ideas, or artistic expression by anyone, whether government officials, church authorities, private pressure groups, or speakers, writers, and artists themselves. Now, I would disagree with that because I don't think you can have an individual censoring someone. It's just a personal decision. In its narrower, more legalistic sense, and this is where we get towards where I'm coming from, this more legal sense, censorship means only the prevention by official government action of the circulation of messages already produced. Thus, writers who censor themselves before putting words on paper for fear of failing to sell their work are not engaging in censorship in the narrower sense, nor are those who boycott sponsors of disliked television shows. Yet all of these restraints have the effect of limiting the diversity that would otherwise be available in the marketplace of ideas, and so may be considered censorship in the broadest sense. Again, it's this broad versus narrow sense of censorship. I would disagree with that broad sense of censorship in the same way that I have just recently boycotted a couple of corporations who are operating in Russia still, Western corporations who are operating in Russia, not just virtue signaling and doing it because I want to sound good, and they aren't like corporations I never buy from anyway. These are genuinely some corporations I do buy things from, and I am boycotting them. And I'm doing it because I would have a moral dilemma inside me buying from these corporations who are doing things that I find morally problematic. And so for me, I'm like, I don't want anything to do with you now. That is not me censoring them. That is me boycotting them, but I'm not censoring them. They are still able to sell all their stuff in Russia. Like, I am not changing how they operate. Now, what I hope to do is, with many other people, give enough public community pressure that they go, oh, actually, we are going to change our minds, because hopefully at some point there is a cost to them that means they'll change their minds. I mean, that's the hope, but I don't even think that is censorship. because they're still able to do what they want to do. It's just that some people won't buy their stuff. It's not censorship. So let's now talk about Derek. So Derek Lambert is a host of Myth Vision, and he has hosted that show for a number of years and had Dr. Price on a number of times, and has met him. Has met the families got together. They know each other pretty well, and they are really friendly on that kind of level that allows Derek to compartmentalize some of the problematic moral things that have been coming out in hints, I think. But at some stage, well, at the stage of watching the Pine Creek interview, Derek has gone, right, okay, these views are now really explicit and they're out there for everyone. This isn't something that Dr. Price just holds and doesn't talk about, just holds in his mind. It may come out in a dinner conversation or something. This is now very publicly out there. And these are viewpoints that I, as Derek, find really, really morally problematic. And there are personal connections to that. And he's done a really good, eloquent video talking about how he when he was an addict, he was sort of low down and felt worthless. And there is an analogy to the kind of people that Dr. Price was advocating shooting to death, in terms of, you know, their writing and they're sort of worthless human beings and that, et cetera, or whatever. So, you know, I don't want to get into the long weeds of that particular discussion, but I'm trying to say that for Derek, he came to a realization that actually there's now a line that's been crossed where I am now more accurately morally evaluating this other person, Dr. Price, and have a better handle on what he believes. And what he believes has crossed that line for me that I don't want to now. I would feel uncomfortable interviewing him. We'll be talking about these ideas, but there are these other ones over here that I know he holds and occasionally come out with the occasional like sentence that gets by. But even if he didn't, you know, say those things off the cuff occasionally, that me knowing he has them means that I find it morally disharmonious and there's cognitive dissonance going on if I'm to interview him. And, you know, we're going to be nice and civil and everything, but he holds really properly egregious views. And so what Derek has done, and I really, really admire him for this, because actually it's not easy. The easiest thing for him to do, as far as not getting hassle from other people, would be to continue interviewing Dr. Price. People can compartmentalize their views, but he would continue interviewing him, etc., etc., etc. And that might have been the easiest, but that's not being true to yourself. Compartmentalizing isn't being true to yourself, I would argue. It is not being honest with yourself. And so what he's done is saying, right, Dr. Price has crossed this line here, and this line is a line for me personally where I find it uncomfortable to speak to him. And I would be giving him a platform whereby those views, if I'm not actively allowing him to platform those views, I am implicitly, you know, justifying them by allowing him as a human to be on here and have those views, etc., etc. And so for him, for Derek, that would be morally problematic. And so Derek has rightly said, so I feel uncomfortable doing that, and I'm not going to interview him. Now, is this censorship? Let's go back. No. In the same way that me walking past that person on the side of the street shouting things that I don't agree with, and me deciding not to put a soapbox under him to give him a better platform to shout those horrible things, that's not censorship, me deciding not to do that. Right? So Derek deciding not to give him platform now is not censorship, because he can still publish a huge number of books. Well, he has published a huge number of books, and he will continue to do so. And he can speak in these places like Pine Creek and elsewhere, and he gets invited to conferences still. There is absolutely no way that he has been cancelled. So first of all, he's not been cancelled. This isn't cancel culture. This is an individual saying, I have a moral problem with you, and here are the reasons I have a moral problem with you. It's not like I'm hiding away from them. I produce a couple of videos where I've said very clearly, here are the problems, and I don't. And West 501 here, I mean, says it quite nicely, which is, who needs such conflict? Well, actually, here the conflict is internal. I'd say first and foremost, this is an internal conflict. So who wants I don't want to be sitting here interviewing someone that I know deep inside causes me some real moral, like, problematic kickback. Like, internally, I just haven't this cognitive dissonance going on all the time. Like, do you know what? To be true to myself, I'm not going to interview him. Maybe Dr. Price will go away and think about this, but I'm sure he'll just entrench more, because that's what's happened in the past. And so I don't think it will make any difference to Dr. Price. It's interesting that some other people, Dr. Richard Carrier has given a scathing evaluation of Dr. Price, saying that he's known this for years and blah, blah, blah. So you want to check out, it's on my Twitter actually, but you can check out his own Facebook comments on that. But yeah, internal conflict is I think, I think Derek is right to recognize that he has internal conflict, obviously, and right to act on it, rather than just compartmentalize it in his brain, because that is running away from the problem. And he is stuck by his guns, and I just cannot but admire him for that, because he's going to get a lot of stick from a lot of people, and this will be tribal. So the people who genuinely and generally agree with Dr. Price, because what happens, we project here. So you'll have an awful lot of projection, which is, Dr. Price has these views and I have those views. So Derek deplatforming Dr. Price is in effect having a moral evaluation of me, right? So if I'm a real Dr. Price fan and I like him for his politics as much as anything else, and then if Derek Lambert deplatforms Dr. Price on account of his moral and political viewpoints, then he's also, by extension, because I support those viewpoints, morally evaluating my viewpoints as being problematic as wrong. So that's going to get my back up. So you're going to have lots of Dr. Price people who are going to be having a go at Derek for saying, how dare you do this? And throwing all sorts of stuff. This is political correctness gone mad. You are cancelling him. This is censor Nazis. I've seen it all. All these things are said. And it's none of those things. So what they are, by extension, doing in saying that is saying, you should interview Dr. Price because I say you should. So it's like reverse censor Nazism. If you're saying that Derek, by not interviewing him, is being a censor Nazi, and I've seen those quotes directly, that's what some people are saying, then demanding that Derek does interview him is censor Nazism in reverse, right? You are forcing someone to interview someone who they don't want to interview because they've got morally problematic viewpoints, and you're forcing them to interview them because you want them to. Dude, like, go start up your own channel. If you feel that strongly about Dr. Price, go and start up your own channel. And I don't want to get into, as I said, a long ways of, the exact viewpoints of Dr. Price here, but the principle is that Derek has every right to not speak to someone and to not platform someone if he doesn't want to, because it's his channel and it's his efforts and it's his life and it's his moral compass that he uses to determine what is right and wrong in his life, and that stretches to who he's talking to and how he interviews them. So the idea that it is censorship, I think, is wrong. It is just completely incorrect, and it can only be understood as censorship on an individual level, which to me makes absolutely no sense, because it means every time we as individuals decide not to talk to someone, we are censoring them. Like, if you agree that's the case, then okay, this is censorship, but you've just completely bastardized my understanding of the term censorship, and I don't think that works on an individual level. So given that I don't think this can be defined as censorship, and this is a free individual deciding to do what he wants with his own YouTube channel. Now, in the same way that Derek is free to do that, you as viewers are free to go, I don't agree with you, Derek, and I feel so strongly about this and so supportive of Dr. Price that I am no longer going to subscribe to your channel or donate to your channel or watch your channel or whatever. Of course, you're free to do that. Derek is not forcing you to watch his channel in the same way I'm not forcing you to watch mine. If you disagree with me, fair enough. We can hopefully have a robust debate about it, and Derek will have been having these debates. But I, you know, in that disagreement, we can sort of try and rationalize our positions and hone our positions and improve our positions. But I mean, enforcing Derek to interview somebody he doesn't want to interview seems like a bizarre thing, you know, to expect. So you know, if you don't like what Derek has done, you can go to other places. And I think what this really does is opens up the you know, tribalism, political divide. I mean, politics is so, you know, the old-fashioned, very English thing that used to, you know, never talk about politics and religion. This is why, because it divides people so strongly. Politics is morality writ large, as I said earlier, and so therefore, you know, that's why it can be so divisive. Because if you have someone that has really at the opposite end of the spectrum politics to you, that means they have at the opposite end of the spectrum morality to you, moral evaluations of everything to you, and that's really problematic. If you can accept that you shouldn't have to sit down and have dinner with Hitler if you don't want, then you should accept that the principle is fine, and it's just where you draw the line. Derek has drawn that line in a different place to maybe you have if you support Dr. Price. And the reason he's done that is because he's got a different moral evaluation of those political viewpoints. And just because you align yourself politically with Dr. Price doesn't mean that Derek is censoring Dr. Price or cancelling him, because you wouldn't be saying that if you agreed with Derek's, you know, moral evaluation points. So this is all this does is just like open up a whole, or it exemplifies the tribalism of politics. And so I don't see a problem. I mean, it's interesting, you know, you talk about Trumpism. I don't want to go off on complete tangents here, but, you know, someone like Trump, for example, was wanting to regulate the media because they were saying things about him that he didn't like, right? He literally wanted to regulate the media, which is, you know, your First Amendment rights and so on and so forth. Now, that's an attempt at censorship, right? So if you you know, Dr. Price very much supported Trump and probably still does support Trump. Now, don't cry and whinge about censorship over here and then not whinge about actual attempts at state censorship over there. You know, don't commit to double standards. But I wrote an article on Only Sky. I just read the sort of towards the end of it, and see what you think. It's out there for you. I'll put a link later down below in the description. So this is not an example of bullying groupthink where a bunch of Twitter do-gooders forces someone to do what they don't want to do. This was an informed decision of someone not liking the content of a scholar in one domain and thinking that he doesn't want to promote such thoughts on his own platform. Morally agreeing with other people and agreeing to do what they would like you to do is not some kind of conspiratorial groupthink censorship. This is the difference between doing something primarily to accord with the expectations of others in order to fit in, as opposed to doing something to accord with one's own personal morality that also just so happens to accord with the expectations of some others. I just want to explain that. So some people might say, oh, Derek is just giving in to these do-gooders, these PC do-gooders are trying to force him to shut down Derek, to shut down Dr. Price. No, Derek has made an informed decision where he's listened to some of those viewpoints, he's listened to all these other viewpoints, and he said, no, this is a decision about my own inner moral compass and my own inner moral disharmony, and I'm going to make a decision that reflects that. Now, my decision might accord with some of those PC do-gooders, or whatever derogatory term you want to use, who are trying to force me to shut down Dr. or deplatform Dr. Price. I may end up making a decision that accords with them, but I'm not doing it because of them. I'm doing it because of me. So this isn't some kind of group think. This is an individual think. And I'm an individual, as Derek, making decision on behalf of myself. And as I go on to say, you have to be true to yourself. Surely that's something we can agree on. If you hold strong moral convictions, then you should surely want to stand by them and let them guide you. I run a YouTube channel myself, my own personal enterprise, and I ultimately get to decide what I do because it's my time and my life and my channel. If I choose not to interview someone for whatever reason it might be, that is my choice. Now, if you don't like the fact that I am exercising my own legally supported liberty, then you can watch a different channel. You can choose not to donate via the different monetization methods. For bigger channels where this is a full-time gig, these decisions carry more weight and decisions can get blurred given the potential financial fallout. Corporations make these calculations all of the time. Think Russia right now. So for someone deciding not to interview a scholar because of certain views that the former finds problematic, we should not find fault. People do, though, because those viewers and consumers become involved in YouTube or blog or Twitter or communities where they psychologically project themselves onto the host or other community members. Thus, when there is disagreement, there is an eruption of cognitive dissonance. How dare you make that decision because I thought you were like me and I don't like that decision? Of course, it works both ways. How dare you not make that decision because I thought you were like me, so on and so forth. And just as I say towards the end, but sometimes the decisions go. So I talk about, like I said earlier, sometimes these decisions go on in our head, and you don't even know about them. Then you don't call that censorship. So. Watch out for double standards. Bye, Trude. Thank you very much for hanging out. So sometimes the decisions do go public and sometimes people kick off. But even so, this is not censorship. My deciding not to interview someone is not censorship, is not cancel culture, is not the nanny state. It's me saying I don't appreciate some aspect of you and I would rather not associate myself or my brand with you. Even if I am doing this for purely commercial reasons, as some claimed of Nike with Colin Kaepernick, we are all still entitled to do so. It's being a moral agent. Now, sometimes we overcome our moral discomfort because the financial payback is too good to turn down. We all have our price, I guess. So, price, good pun. So for example, Derek, if he is paid $1 million to continue interviewing Dr. Price, may do so because everyone has their price. But for him at the moment, it is not worth that moral discomfort for him to continue interviewing Dr. Price. But when it comes to a content provider making a choice for their own channel or output, they have their own moral compass to answer to. Politics is morality writ large, and so a huge political and moral gulf between people can be a bridge too far for some, and people are different. So if you love that area of the moral compass, if the politics and morality of any given person floats your boat, fair enough. But you don't get to decide what they do with their time. Get over it. Start your own channel or your own platform. That's the free market. Vote with your feet and with your wallet. Go and get a paid up subscription to Fox, OAN and Newsmax, but don't expect me to be platforming Tucker Carlson anytime soon because you are a fan. I think this is a good point. And I want to read that again. Vote with your feet and your wallet. Go and get a paid up subscription to Fox, OAN and Newsmax, but don't expect me to be platforming Tucker Carlson anytime soon because you are a fan. So imagine I've got my YouTube channel here, which I do. You don't have to imagine too much. You're literally watching me. And I'm a liberal leftist, pretty much. I'm economics centrist, probably, but socially left. Avowedly so. Whatever. Deal with it. And we can argue about it. Fair enough. But I am not going to I despise Tucker Carlson, right? So I'm not going to get Tucker Carlson on here and allow him to platform his views. I mean, I might want to do that if I'm going to contest his views. And this is all about contesting those views. So if Derek Lambert was all about contesting Robert Price's political and moral views, then fair enough. But it's not about that. It's about something else. But those political and moral views get in the way of Derek being able to feel good about doing what he was doing with Dr. Price. So I would not feel happy interviewing Tucker Carlson about, I don't know, sailing, right? His love of sailing. I have no idea if he likes sailing. Probably not. Or his love of bow ties or whatever. You know, talk to Tucker Carlson about this in the knowledge that I find him morally egregious. I just wouldn't. I wouldn't do that. I'm not going to give you, Tucker Carlson, a platform to hear, to occasionally voice those views, or even knowing that you have those views, and to be just happily talking about bow ties with you, right? And therefore, I'm not going to interview Tucker Carlson. Now, if someone comes to me and say, "Oh, yes, you're censoring Tucker Carlson. You're cancelling him." No, I'm not. Go and get a subscription to Fox. Go and watch him on Fox. He's got a bigger platform than I could ever dream of having. So I'm not cancelling him. I'm deciding not to interview him on my own channel, and that's that. And as I say at the end, the very last paragraph, which is, people who shout about liberty, freedom, and the free market don't half whinge when other people make choices they don't like. And this is broadly where I want to finish up, which is, you talk about liberty. Well, actually, what this ends up being is you must do what I want you to do. I like Dr. Price. Therefore, you, Derek Lambert, you should be interviewing Dr. Price because I like him. How dare you? How dare you make your own personal decision? This should be a free country. You should be able to interview Dr. Price because this is a free country. But you can't have your freedom and refuse to interview Dr. Price. Whoa, that's something weird going on there. That's a little bit odd to me. If you're so big on freedom and liberty, that is Derek's personal choice and liberty to be able to do what he wants to do. And he's well within his rights to do that. And not only within his rights to do that, I actually think he's morally justified in doing that. But I don't really want to get into like analysing Dr. Price's views. I do find them morally problematic. I'm at the opposite end of the spectrum to him. And some of those things that he said on Pine Creek, I think were really, really problematic. And I think Derek was right to do what he did as far as aligning with my position. But more importantly, he was right to do it because he was being true to himself. And really, that's what this is all about. Derek was being true to himself, to his own moral compass. So he did the right thing. VA, legend, 666. I've got a cold cup of tea here now. Oh, that's cold. When I was a child, a neighbor kid would come into our yard when we were playing and bully us younger kids. My parents banned him from our yard. Censor. Your parents were Nazi censors that censored that bully from your yard. They cancelled him. It's just cancel culture. That is PC gone mad. Oh, thank goodness we live nowadays where we just accept bullies in and allow them to continue bullying. You get the point. Thank you, VA. That's a good analogy to show there. He is. I mean, it's a brilliant analogy actually, because you're saying this is my property, but this is our property. You are coming into our property to do things and say things which we find problematic. And even if you don't say them, I've seen you say them. And actually, I really don't like them. So I don't really want you being on my property. You might be speaking to my kids and spreading some of those things you say, which I don't think are nice. I don't want you here. That's my right because it's my property. I'm not cancelling you because you can go out and carry on saying those things. But here's the thing. If people keep serially kicking you off their property, maybe you need to look at your personality. Maybe you need to look at your behavior and views. Because if this keeps going on, like I'm an individual, and I'm doing what I think is well within my rights to do, get off my property. If you go to another property and get kicked off, another property and get kicked off, another property and kicked off, maybe you need to look at your viewpoints and your evaluate your own character here, because maybe it's you that's in the wrong and not all these separate places. I don't know. Just a thought. So VA, thanks for that. I think that's a nice addition. There's been lots of conversation. Sorry, this has been, as you can tell, total stream of consciousness. I didn't really prepare this because I've got to start work soon, and I thought, I better quickly get on. Strike while the iron is hot, as they say. So let's have a very quick squiz at what people are saying here. So here you go. This was Mr. Mackenzie. I felt ill watching the Pine Creek interview. I was vaguely aware of Dr. Price's politics, but this was the first time that I heard it from the horse's mouth. Yeah, I haven't actually watched it. I've watched little bits of it, but I already know broadly what he believes. And actually, so this is interesting, perhaps. It's interesting, perhaps, because I think watching that, I would get too much cognitive dissonance, or I'd feel too uncomfortable that I would not be able to watch it. I'm quite empathic or empathetic, I think, to the point where I sometimes have, problems doing things like that, where I like Dr. Price's books and I like his thinking, and I can't watch this, and I know these views and I know what you're saying, and I just can't marry those. So I'm just going to, maybe that's me compartmentalizing, but it's not because I know what he's like. It's not like I'm admitting it fully. I just don't want to hear it. I feel uncomfortable hearing it. So I don't know what that says about me, but there you go. Thank you for that. Hi to everyone. Thanks to people who are coming in and saying hello and whatnot. I've been surprised how many people have attacked Derek on grounds of free speech while ignoring that Price is actually saying huge cognitive dissonance. Daniel, this is what I was saying at the end there, which is free speech and general liberty. It's like he should be able to say what he wants, but you have to allow him to say what he wants. So it's like he should have the freedom to say what he wants on your channel. So you don't have the freedom not to allow him to say that. You have to let him say that. So that it's a real double standards going on there. It's like, yeah, he should be free to say what he wants because I agree with him. So that's all that's going on here. It's the projection of people onto Dr. Price, right? Or Dr. Price becomes an extension of them because he has the same, politics and morality as them. So it's like, and that must be right. So you not allowing to say that, I can't handle that because that's effectively morally evaluating me, and I've got to be right. So you have to be wrong. So you should allow him to say stuff on your channel, and of course, that's freedom in one respect, but not freedom in the other. And of course, again, Dr. Price can say those things, just not on my place. Thank you very much. Go and read his books. Go and start your own channel and interview him on those ideas if you really want that. So there you go. Thank you. Oh, here we go. Yeah, Twitter's always a good. I was unaware of the views until Twitter started to bullhorn. Yeah. Yeah. There you go. And I heard him say that he was a Republican and a Trump supporter. I was still fine watching him. After Pine Creek, I realized he's super problematic. Opposing views are fine. Suggests murdering rioters isn't. Yeah, I think, and this is what one of the big problems that Derek had, which is like trying to justify shooting to death people who were breaking up property involved in the BLM riots. And it's already problematic because you've got, ethnicity, race and ethnicity involved, or, color. And you've got like criminality involved with social justice protests. So you've got people being at these places, maybe breaking stuff up or looting, but people there being genuinely doing, social justice, the attempts at social justice. So it's all really confusing. But then just saying, shoot the looters to death, is not nuanced. And it's also saying that property is more important than human life. It has greater value. Like a shop front has greater value than human life, and where Derek's problem with it starts is when Derek was at the lowest of his low. It was sort of analogous with that kind of like not worth anything. But now look where Derek is, and he's had this rebirth, and he's had the rehabilitation to allow him to flourish as a human being. Well, imagine if a looter could have that rehabilitation and flourish as a human being, but doesn't have that chance because you shot them. And so that's where Derek and I'm really with Derek on that. You're not giving this person a chance. You're saying, right, just shoot them. That's it. There's real authoritarian, which is kind of what you'd expect for someone who likes Trump, which is an authoritarian, that kind of political psychology that's involved. But it's never the best position to truly understand causal circumstances and why people do things, and then say, well, what can we do about this scenario to maybe ameliorate it so that you don't do these sort of things in the future and you become a better person. I mean, we could just shoot you, but maybe there are more positive things we could do. So there you go. Supporting statues erected by the KKK. I live in Richmond, VA, and the center of this issue, and supported by racists. How is he not a racist? He can say he's not, but his words and actions say he is. Again, I don't want to get into the particulars here, but you can imagine where I sit with this, which is, so someone said something odd in one of the conversations on one of the socials where I was debating this on Facebook, saying, oh, what's the problem? These are just beliefs. It's like, no, they're not just beliefs, right? You can't just say, oh, do you know what? He's just got beliefs. You would never say that about Hitler. I don't want to go to Godwin's law and all that, but those beliefs are either driving behavior, like it's going to be voting behavior, so voting to change a government that enacts those beliefs, or behavior towards others, discriminating actively against others, or it's epiphenomenalistic beliefs, which means the beliefs don't cause the behavior, they reflect the behavior. So you're doing these things, and then the steam that generates from your machinations of your brain are the beliefs that are rationalizations of your behavior. Either way, they're not just beliefs. And so all people that say stuff like that is shorthand for me, is saying you just morally agree with Dr. Price or whoever you're talking about. You just morally agree with this person, and this is your way of justifying why they should be allowed to continue saying what they're saying. That's all that is. And most of it, so this is what I talk, it just gets tribalistic, which is like the people that are having a go at Derek are the people who broadly are the people who morally agree with Dr. Price or somewhat agree with Dr. Price. And the people who are saying well done to Derek are the people who agree with Derek's evaluation. Of course, that's what's going to be. But there are some nuanced people in the middle saying, oh, I think it's a shame, but I understand why it had to happen. And there are some nuanced positions, but yeah. I've got to shoot off in a second, but are there any more views? I got to admit, I found Dr. Price's views way too extreme, made me feel very uncomfortable. Mitch, good to have you here, Mitch. Dr. Price, whom I enjoy as a biblical commentator, has always dropped hints about his political slant, which I don't agree with at all. What I think also hit Derek hard was Price's take on addiction. And again, actually, I hadn't heard that yet, so I haven't watched the interview. I've seen bits of it, but yeah, if you're going to trigger Derek into and triggers, like, I mean that in a good way, not in a like if you're going to get Derek to get his back up again about something, that's definitely going to be it. And so, yeah, absolutely. So here we have another view, Paul Schlachter. I've changed my mind on a platform in censorship, cancelling subject over the last days. Digesting that interview, you brilliantly summed it up. Oh, thank you very much. That's really kind. Thank you. At the and I'm going to go in a second, but all that remains to be said really is that Dr. Price can continue saying what he's saying. He's got a platform. He's got loads of books. He's got podcasts, and there will be a conservative atheist who will gladly interview him. He'll still get talking gigs at conferences. And, you know, Pine Creek, for example, is probably going to continue. I mean, he's a conservative atheist himself, Doug, I believe, you know, from his own admission. So, yeah. And as West 501 says, Mitchie up, Derek was extremely upset with Price coming from drug addiction. Derek is the living proof people can change. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so 100%. Anyway, I hope this was of some use to people. Sorry about the technical problems at the beginning. My laptop was Windows updating just when I wanted to start a live, because that's what happens. I was just trying to be someone was trying to cancel me. Was it Windows? Windows, bloody cancel culture. Microsoft trying to cancel me. I hope this is of some use. There's always nuance here, and the go-to of Nazi censorship, cancel culture, and PC gone mad is always going to get my back up, because it's such a lazy shortcut, and it's not good enough. It's not good enough because all it does is allows you to perpetuate the culture wars narrative, and these are the talking points of particularly right wingers. They're always attacking the left for cancel culture. If you want to see some stuff I've said on this before, I have there are plenty of videos in my back catalogue, and I have an unbelievable debate with David French, who actually he was a prospective presidential candidate. So there you go. I've debated him on cancel culture on Unbelievable last year, I think it was. So that's up on my back catalogue, as well as Unbelievables. You can check that out. My views on cancel culture is that it's really used by the right, particularly to perpetuate culture wars, and get you worrying about these things far more than the problem they really are, so that you don't think about actual policy and actual, you know, decent politics about what we should do with, you know, welfare and budgets and stuff like that. War on Christmas, you know, Mr. Potato Head, and all these kind of things, like, get people really riled up on this and cancel culture. And then, yeah, so I think be wary of anyone that shouts cancel culture, because I think it's either a lazy shorthand, or it's an actual attempt to distract people towards what they see as an easy win, politically speaking. There you go. Anyway, thanks, guys, and thanks for all your really kind feedback. Thanks, Mitch and Ricky and West 501, Ricky Johnson, that is. Really nice to you to validate me. Sometimes I wonder whether I make sense, especially on these stream of consciousnesses. So at least it sounds like it did make sense. So that's awesome. Take care. Thank you for Vaguely Agnostic for the super chat. Really generous. It means a lot. Please don't cancel me. Please don't. Please continue watching and all that stuff. Take care. Question everything, particularly yourselves. And I love that thing that someone said earlier, which is, I thought this about that, but I've changed my mind slightly. It's always really healthy, the ability to change your mind. You know, don't be afraid to change your mind in light of new evidence and new arguments. There you go. Take care. All the best. Toodle pips, and speak soon.